So changing gears a little bit, what and when are we burning? We're burning late phenology species, which I'll talk more about. We're burning what's called the WUI, the wildland urban interface, fuels reduction for both forest and brushlands, woody encroachment on rangelands and oak woodlands in the form of fir removal and brush, logging slash and other piles. And then we've done some burns exclusively for training, and we do more of those burns now in other counties than we do in our own county because now we're fostering enough success to where people are doing their own burns here in Humboldt. So that's real exciting, and hopefully something we can get a trickle effect across the state. So great, we're burning all this stuff, but what does it cost? And more importantly, what are the alternatives, right? So I mentioned it a second ago. To be a Prescribed Burn Association member in our group is $25 a year. I'm assuming everybody has leather gloves. If not, you can borrow some. I'm also assuming everybody has cotton pants, shirt, and a hat. Otherwise, you can borrow one. And then the tools, we have a burn trailer absolutely plumb full of tools, so nobody needs to buy a tool. And if you have a tool at home, like a shovel, you could bring it. And then the other thing that we ask people to do is to bring a lighter, because undoubtedly somebody shows up with 5 or 6 lighters and at the end of the day has 0. But that's just part of how it is. So we ask you to bring a lighter. So total participation, if you've never been on a burn and you're curious about it, you just want to show up and see what it's like. Total cost is going to be $26, and if you show up to the 2 meetings a year, then you get you get 2 meals and beer and whatever else you want to drink. So that's all included in the cost of $26. So pretty cheap. But what if so that's the participation cost. Somebody interested that doesn't own property like myself. What about the treatment cost as a landowner? Because that's really what's going to drive the bus in terms of whether we see more fire or we don't see more fire on the landscape. And I think the first thing to talk about is the alternatives, right? So alternative 1 is herbicide costs. And these are rough numbers. I'm not an economist, and I'm not a herbicide expert. So, take this with a grain of salt. But essentially for broadleaf control on rangelands, you're looking at anywhere from $4 to $30 or $60, right? So $4 to $60. Anything on the woody plant side, and this is data from a coyote brush trial I had, we're looking at $40 an acre for 240, which in my trials didn't perform very well. Or you're, at the low end, you're looking at glide for $75, right? So we're looking at, let's call it $15 an acre basically for herbaceous plants, $75 an acre for woody plants. And if you want to get grass only, which we can do with post, you're looking at $15 an acre. Okay. Gives us a little background as to what the chemical costs are. So now, what about alternative 2, which is arguably maybe the more common alternative in this state, has some limitations in terms of landscape and scale, but nonetheless, it's an option that needs to be talked about. So if we're looking at a hired cat, it's anywhere from $85 to $150 an hour. So call it $500 an acre, $600 an acre. A hired chainsaw is going to be somewhere between $400 and $800 an acre, and an excavator is going to be somewhere between $900 and $1,500 an acre. Rough numbers. Again, not an economist, but we know that those are successful. The chainsaw is going to be comparable with prescribed fire because you'll have resprouting, where the cat and the excavator maybe not so much. But those are pretty expensive dollar figures, especially when we're talking about, either poor sites for timber production or even the best site for range production. It's going to take a long time to make that money back. So it becomes kind of tricky and difficult to justify, doing something with the vegetation problem that we have on some of these private properties when you look at the mechanical option alone, especially without, state or federal dollars to kind of lift it up and make it an economic package, which we do have some options. But again, the landscape scale, we're gonna probably fall short, and this is what we've been doing the last 50 years that got us to where we are now. So getting into the cost of the actual implementation of the burn itself, for your CALFIRE permits for your low complexity burns, which I'm sure most people are familiar with, the LE5, used for large piles. Excuse me, the LE7 and LE8 are for higher complexity burns. Those permits are paired together, and it doesn't matter either way. The cost for the permits themselves are zero, but the permits will outline requirements that you need to have on site that will, add to the cost. So I'll talk about that in a couple slides. This map on the right, I want to point out, because the area in red, basically you have to have a CALFIRE permit year-round, doesn't matter. The area not outlined in red, so the majority of the North State, you're only required to have a CALFIRE permit during declared fire season, which runs from the 1st of May until it closes. Historically, it closed on, November 1st most years. The last few years with the catastrophic wildfires we've been having into the fall has pushed the closure back into December. So it's something to pay attention to, but not all of the year do you even have to have a CALFIRE permit. Conversely, all of the year, no matter where you are, you have to have an air quality permit. And I just want to point out here, this is some work that the Prescribed Burn Association has done to kind of limit the barriers to using prescribed fire on the North Coast. And that is, we have worked with the North Coast Unified Air District to reduce the cost of burning for any burns that benefit the public interest and be beneficial to the state. So essentially we went from, figures as high as $1,300 to, zero cost for any burning that has public benefit. There's still the $20 a year standard permit for 4x4 pile burning in your backyard, but anything larger than that requires a smoke management plan is now $0 for everyone. So I think that you'll see in my next couple slides that this is a huge deal. And when we're talking about burning and trying to make it economically feasible, this is awesome. And we should really be grateful to, our air district partners and their board members for making this happen for at least the next few years while they have some additional grant dollars. So when you talk about cost, and these are kind of some egregious numbers, but when you talk about in-season burns, and this gets back to in-season requiring a CALFIRE permit. So that obviously if it's in season, it's going to be hotter. It requires more resources. Those resources come with a cost. So in-season burns are basically $2,500 plus or minus $500. Out-of-season burns range everywhere and all over the place. But, $400, $500 plus or minus $500 basically. So the primary cost was air quality permits, and this is a busy table I'm showing you. But what I just want to pause and take a minute and point out that everything that is in gray are in-season burns, right? So this is a few different years. We have 2017 at the top, then we have 2018, then 19, and then getting down to 20 at the bottom, right? 2020, Dinsmore 2020. Let's go across that one. 165 acres of oak woodlands burned. We didn't have a burn plan or a burn boss because it was the middle of winter and we weren't concerned about escape. We're burning oak woodlands surrounded by, green grass essentially. We didn't have volunteer fire department involvement, so we didn't, have a stipend for those folks, which the Prescribed Burn Association recommends basically giving the volunteer fire department stipends to cover their cost to show up to a private burn. The air quality fees now in 2020 are $0. Our crew was 5 people. It was basically, sending lighters down hills and then having somebody shuttle lighters back to the top of the hill on a side-by-side. So our total cost was $0 or near it. We didn't incorporate the fuel cost. But, 165 acres of treatment for $0 is pretty decent, right? But then if you go look at some of our in-season burns, let's go to the very top one for comparison. This was the first burn we ever did. It was small. We wanted it to be small, contained, controlled, everything moving slowly. So it was an 18-acre Medusa head burn in season. We paid $500 for a burn plan. We paid a burn boss, which is one of those private contractors, to come burn boss the burn. So he organized us. He came with additional liability insurance and, really helped us kind of work as a team and kind of orchestrated us. And we had a few volunteer fire departments, so we sent each of them a couple $100 checks. At the time, the air quality fee was $100. You'll see those fees go up and then drop off again, like I just talked about, went to $0. And our crew size was 30 people, which, if you're an industry person, that, has a cost, unless it's volunteers like the PBA. So the total cost was $2,700, and that's $152 an acre, compared to we could have gone in and treated the Medusa head with post at $20 an acre. So economically, that obviously doesn't work out. Likewise, if you look at the big number in the middle, we have Shelter Cove 2018 doing some WUI burning basically right around a house. Burned 3 acres, had some costs associated with it. $1,000 an acre. At that cost, we can go hire an excavator, right? So I think we are beginning to learn basically when fire is the right tool, when it isn't. There's programs. NRCS has an excellent program right now that helps fund prescribed fire, but even with that program, the small acreage doesn't really pencil when you get down to dollars per acre. But when you get to the larger acreage, it really makes a big difference. And I'll speak to that kind of on the individual case. But I just wanted to show the main take home is the air quality fees are gone now. And that's going to really drive the cost per acre down to where it's manageable, especially if you're burning in the wintertime, which are these white windows, right? So on this chart, the white was pretty cheap and was economical even with the, some of the burn fees or the air quality fees. And now it's actually going to really, really flip the coin, I think.